And welcome, Raise Your Inner Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you feeling this week? I hope you're doing well. Hope you're not getting too pulled down by all the crazy. It doesn't seem to be letting up, does it? It's been a long month, and only more to come. We had some fairly serious snow a couple weeks ago. This week, it's all gone. Had a warm stretch, several nights where it didn't even freeze, some rain, and now it's just sort of brown and wet. It's not necessarily the best, but I like it better than a bunch of snow. I was thinking I would get out on the scooter on one of the warmer days, but didn't quite get over that hump. A little too windy, a little too wet, lost the opportunity. Looks like it's going to be a bit before another one comes. Oh well, I'll be ready when it does. Lots to talk about this week. The one tiny silver lining in the Republican crazy train. Always plenty to talk about on the pod. So here's what we're going to be covering. The measles outbreak and all that tells us. Elon Musk continued government takeover and corruption. Trump's gutting of the military and the FBI. Some excellent new crazies and cravens of the week. Some thoughts on managing money for kids. Our challenge of the week and some new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things are pulling me down? The first up, our daughter, for her nutrition class at school, had to make a dinner for the whole family, kind of like their final assignment. And we expanded that to include our other family in town, so it was 6 people for dinner. She chose to do some authentic Japanese food from a fancy cookbook she has, and it was really genuinely good. The recipes were pretty complicated. She spent basically a full day and a half on it. We were running around trying to find the right ingredients, but she did it, got it all done on time, which is always one of the issues, right? Getting things ready at the same time and when you said they would be. It was just great. It was impressive. It was super tasty. Fun meal with the family. Can't hardly put a value on things like that. Just good in every way. That was lovely. I went back to the gym for the first time since the heart procedure. There was some question about whether that was okay. I asked my cardiologist. They said, should be fine. Just start easy. If that feels good, you can slowly work back to normal levels. So I decided to go and basically cut all the weights in half. And it was ridiculous how easy that was. Of course it would be, but it was just shocking. But the question wasn't the muscle strength, but getting the heart going too much. Wanted to watch out for that. So that felt good. It was super easy, but not nothing either. I felt it a little bit afterwards, and now I'm back on track. I'll go again maybe today even, hopefully. Add a little bit more weight. The goal being back to normal in 2 weeks. Happy about that for sure. Related item, my resting heart rate is returning to normal. I normally have a pretty low rate, like 60 beats a minute. Been sort of proud of that because it's a good sign of health. But it's been up by 15 or 20 points since the procedure. Apparently that's normal, nothing to worry about. They said it would probably get back to normal in, 6 months or so. I was like, wow, really? But it's been 2 weeks, and it's already starting to come down pretty well. Like right now, as I'm writing this, recording this, it's like 65. So happy about that too. It's a good sign. Oh, this was fun. My very first Social Security payment showed up in our bank account this week. I am officially on Social Security now. Hard to believe, but I must say I don't mind it. I don't mind having a little something showing up in our account every month. It's not the worst thing. Of course, with Musk shutting everything down, one wonders about that going forward. I just read today they are closing something like 800 Social Security offices around the country. How do they expect people to get their benefits if there's no one there to manage the system? And it's their money, right? Anyway. God, that never ends. Oh, a couple fun music items. A friend reached out this week, said he had just played with a great drummer who's moving to the area, thinking about putting together a new cover band, and my friend was wondering if I'd be interested. Normally, I would definitely not be interested for many reasons, mostly that it's only really fun when the band is good, and it's hard to be good. It takes time and experience, and I just don't generally imagine that'd be possible here in town. But the drummer is the most important part. of being good in my experience, and it is insanely fun to play with a good drummer. So I said I might be open to it. Might actually be fun, and that would be pretty amazing to be doing that again. Now, I haven't heard from him. I can imagine he'd be looking for someone younger, for example. Who knows? Maybe someone not yet on Social Security. But it was fun to think about. Speaking of cover bands, I was listening to a tape the other night from probably 1984, so like 40 years ago, of the band I was in at the time. Straight up cover band. You can tell what was on the charts at the time from that tape. But super high-end musicians in that band too. And it was actually pretty good, like impressive. Funny too, I didn't remember this, but apparently I was the guy in the band who sang the Prince songs. I heard 1999, Let's Go Crazy, Purple Rain even, which is a pretty dramatic song, right? And I must say, it was pretty good. My voice was much stronger than I remembered. I mean, it makes sense, it was 40 years ago. Also sort of embarrassing in a way to notice that I was just clearly trying to mimic the original. I mean, that's what the band was, but you don't hear any sense of my own voice in there. Whatever I'm singing, and there's quite a variety. Prince, Springsteen, if you can believe that. Wang Chung, you might not know, but I love that band. Just, whoever it was, I'm changing my voice with each one to sound like the artist. That's a little weird compared to what I've been doing since I went off on my own, but again, that's what that cover band was about. Anyway, that was kind of fun, flashing back to my distant musical past and feeling not too bad about it. So that's a lot of ups this week. That's nice to notice, too, that there's still so many happy, uplifting things happening amongst all the other awfulness. For my downs, honestly, not that much. Sleep has been a little weird lately. Weird dreams. Still missing pickleball, but I'll be back to that soon enough. Stressed out by the news is the main thing, and there's nothing new about that. All right, those are ups and downs for this week. Next up, top stories. I enjoyed starting this segment with good news last week, but I'm afraid I couldn't find any this week, so we'll just have to jump into the bad. Sorry about that. The main one for me this week is the measles outbreak in Texas, and it's spreading now into other states. We had our first death from measles in 10 years this week, a child in Texas who was unvaccinated. There's just so many ways this is bad. It's heartbreaking for the family. It's so unavoidable, unnecessary. All they had to do was just give the kids the shot that we all got for decades. I still remember as a little kid getting a sticker with like a cartoon dead bug on it. The bug was lying on its back, X marks over the eyes to show it was dead. The sticker said, "I just got my measles shot." The bug was the measles and it had been shot. And of course, I loved that sticker because kids love stickers. But we all celebrated vaccines because they kept us from getting sick and dying, and they worked, and that was a very good thing. But now, for some reason, we're going backwards on that. I will never understand it. And as if that wasn't bad enough, now probably the top anti-vaxxer in the country is in charge of the Health and Human Services and the National Institute of Health and all of that. So you can be sure it's only going to get worse. When they asked him, RFK Jr., about this death this week during the cabinet meeting, his response was, "Yeah, that happens. That's normal. We get measles outbreaks every year." So no big deal. To be expected. No empathy for the family. No ownership of the problem. He absolutely has this child's death on his hands, in my opinion. Those parents may not have heard from him directly, but he's been pushing anti-vax conspiracy for years. Had this child been vaccinated, they would almost certainly still be alive. But no second guessing on his part, no questions that maybe he was wrong to tell parents not to get their kids vaccinated. Just more of the same insane, heartless bullshit. He also canceled a trial of a new COVID vaccine that was a pill instead of a shot. Seemed like that would have been a good option to have. He pulled out of an annual meeting where drug companies get together and plan what they're going to put into the flu vaccine for the coming season. And He canceled a public information campaign. I've seen this already. Maybe you have Mild to Wild that encourages people to get the flu vaccine. What do you suppose will come from this and all the other things like it that are sure to follow? People are going to die who didn't need to. It's just that simple. People are going to get more sick. Healthcare costs are going to go up. Research programs are going to shut down. Other countries are going to pull ahead of us on cutting-edge healthcare. It's hard to imagine anyone thinking this is progress, but that's where we are with this Republican administration. If there's any good news with this, in my mind, this kind of thing drives real grassroots pushback. And you're already starting to see some of that in the stories this week about the town hall meetings, people being super upset about us supporting Russia over Ukraine, as they should be, because that's just insane, and against Elon shutting down so many programs. So that's actually a little encouraging, but it's still very early. And the Republicans have put the word out to their House members, just stop having town hall meetings. Isn't that nice? The second big item for me this week is Trump's attack on the military and the FBI. You may know he fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff this week, apparently, basically because he was black, like for real. And he had the audacity to speak of his experience as a black man in the military back when George Floyd was murdered. He also fired 2 women in high positions, again, apparently because they were women, left all the white guys in place. In some ways, more worrying than that, he fired the top legal officers, I think in all 3 main branches of the military. These are the people, and they're completely independent, who make sure the military operates within legal boundaries. The only reason you fire them is if you want to be able to have the military act outside of the law. I mean, it's pretty clear. And this is not only dangerous on its face, but also because of what it does to the morale in the military. Both these actions. It's obvious to say this next thing, but people in the military take their oath seriously. They put their lives on the line for it. To have this administration basically throw out everything they stand for and believe in, it's not faith to the Constitution and the law anymore, it's faith to Donald Trump, the great leader. That cuts deep to the core of who they are and what they stand for, and it will not be taken lightly. In fact, a former Secretary of the Air Force wrote an editorial in the New York Times this past week called "America Has a Rogue President," and saying we need to acknowledge that and respond. It's actually a fairly shocking piece. I encourage you to read it. There's a link in the notes. You may remember my thought from a couple weeks ago that we could see a military coup in this country against Donald Trump and this administration. I know it sounds super crazy and impossible, but this piece from a top military leader is exactly the logic I was talking about. Firing these top officers for no reason, firing these top lawyers, putting Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, and then even worse, Dan Bongino as his deputy, when that position, deputy director, which is the actual operational leader of the FBI, has always been a seasoned agent who knows how things work. But this guy has zero experience in any way. He's just a bomb thrower, right-wing asshole podcaster. These things send the message that this truly is a rogue administration. They are a clear and present threat to the Constitution and the rule of law. And I just don't think you can expect all these people, millions of people who have sworn their lives to protect those things, are just going to stand by and let it happen. I just don't see how that happens. We shall see. And then the third big thing is the incredible corruption and incompetence of Elon Musk and all the things he's doing. First, he was in a cabinet meeting this week and speaking and even leading the cabinet meeting. How is that even possible? He's not elected. He's not confirmed. He should simply not be there under any circumstances. It's just beyond crazy that this is happening at all. But then, as you listen to them and see what they're doing, it's just over and over stupid and lies and corruption. They say they've saved these huge amounts of money, but it turns out they actually hadn't. They saved practically nothing. It's just a joke and a scam. He continues to shut down all kinds of important programs, things that really matter to people. and do it in such stupid and clumsy ways. For example, there was a program that helped disabled high school students transition into college and finding jobs. And this program got cut because it had the word transition in the title, which got flagged as part of their insane anti-DEI campaign. And then, at the same time, his companies just happen, coincidentally, to keep getting new government benefits and contracts. The Justice Department dropped a discrimination suit against SpaceX. Wonder why? They just got another big new contract for Starlink. There was that big State Department order for armored EVs, which are actually armored Tesla Cybertrucks. So he's going around cutting all these programs that help regular people, while at the same time just giving himself more money from the government. And it's right out in the open. This is another thing that I think and hope is going to backfire in a big way. But some of this damage can't be undone. One little item I just read this morning. Our Antarctica research station, under threat from cuts. Apparently, if that gets closed, you can't open it back up. It'll freeze up, it'll get covered in snow, nothing you can do but start over. And so other countries will just rush in and take over the area, and we'll lose everything we built there. That is ultimately the long-term effects of all this. They'll make us weaker, more vulnerable, less competitive in the world, which is why it all seems so dumb to me. Speaking of dumb, one smaller item. They are shutting down 8,000 EV charging spots at government buildings. Just going backwards on that. And by the way, who benefits from that? Elon, who happens to own a competing network of superchargers. For our crazy and craven of the week, Republican, of course, Representative Joe Wilson, has proposed creating a new $250 bill. So a new denomination of U.S. currency with, of course, Donald Trump's picture on it. So a member of Congress thinks to himself, how can I best serve my constituents in these difficult times? What he comes up with is, let's put Trump's face on a new $250 bill. Never mind, by the way, that it's illegal for a living person to be featured on U.S. currency. That's something I just learned. But it's just embarrassing, suck-up cult behavior all the way down. These people really do belong in North Korea, where they can compete for new ways to honor the great leader. More serious crazy, there's a group called the Third Term Project I just heard about that is proposing a constitutional amendment to allow Trump a third term. He keeps joking about this. Do you think they're really joking? I don't. Do you think he would even follow the procedures for a constitutional amendment? Send it to the states, wait until 2/3 ratify it, or would he just say, the people want it, the system is rigged, I'm doing it anyway? I wouldn't bet against that. Closer to home, I mentioned the guy last week shooting at someone from his car in anger. This week, another guy was arrested for chasing his neighbor with an axe. You have to really commit to your rage to take it that far. It's one thing to pick up the axe in the first place. Maybe you had it already. It's another to start chasing someone around with it. There are plenty of opportunities in that scenario to step back and make a better choice. He apparently resisted all of those, and now he's paying the price. Don't let it happen to you, folks. Don't let the crazy get you. Raise your inner game. We're here to help. All right, that's top stories this week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week we talked about my favorite Zen story with the two monks and the great punchline, "Brother, I sit her down back there. Why are you still carrying her?" One of my all-time favorites. This week, sticking with the Zen theme, I want to touch again on the classic saying, be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. Be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. First, it's just good writing. But more important, that contrast sums up the whole mental game journey. Before we work on it, we are typically mastered by our mind. Whatever thoughts come up, we go along with them. They pull us into our head and basically control what we think and say and do. And of course, this is also true with our emotions and our physical impulses. They are normally in control. Excuse me. And pretty much all of our suffering, all our frustration, our disappointment with ourselves comes directly from this process and our lack of control over it. And you can see this in action with the guys we just talked about who took the shot at someone and chased his neighbor with the axe. Those guys lost control of themselves, right? Their anger, their rage took over and caused them to do things we hope they are now disappointed with. On the other hand, when we learn to master our mind, and master makes it sound like a bigger thing than it is, it's really just learning to be aware of what's happening and be intentional with our intention. Once we learn to do that, it affects every area of our lives. Everything gets easier and lighter and more enjoyable. We act in ways we're proud of, and we feel a lot better about ourselves. So that's why this week's Inner Game Gold is so helpful. It reminds us that, number one, we are separate from our mind. If we can learn to master it, we are by definition separate from it. And number two, it states in the clearest possible way the goal of inner game work. Learn to master your mind rather than be mastered by it. And that's Inner Game Gold for this week. Reminder, that's what you learn in our Raise Your Inner Game training, Sports Academy for Athletes, Executive Coaching, and the book. Check it out at raiseyourinnergame.com. Next up, raise your outer game. This week, let's talk about money, and specifically money for kids. We're thinking about this week because tax time is here. Peter, our college student, has to file taxes. Frances, our high schooler, I'm not sure if she does this year, if she made enough last year, but maybe thinking about savings and all that. So a couple things come to mind to share. The first and most important is the idea to get kids in the habit of saving money and specifically putting it into a retirement fund. I know it sounds funny when kids are still teens or even younger, but I was reminded of this week hearing Scott Galloway talk about it. He does a lot of different things. I listen to his podcast. He's a professor at NYU. I like him a lot. But he also has a book out on personal finance, and he says, the good news is I know how to make you rich. The bad news is it's slow. Specifically, he says, if someone puts $300 a month into a low-cost index fund starting in their 20s, by the time they hit retirement age, they'll have millions of dollars. Not counting anything else, no employer match, nothing extra going in there, just $300 a month, millions of dollars. The trick is, it takes 40 years. So that's where we come in as parents. If we can help kids get into that habit when they're teenagers, it's probably the best thing we can do to help them be financially secure in the future. This is one thing we really liked about the Greenlight card we used when our kids were younger. You could incentivize them to save by setting up matching payments to add some amount to whatever they put in, whatever you want. So it grows faster and feels more rewarding, gets them more excited about saving. And you could do it all automatically. We like that service quite a bit, the Greenlight card. We did move both kids over to our bank under our family account last year. That ended up being easier for everyone. And that's super great, by the way, also. I can open up the app, the banking app, move money into their account if I need to, move money from theirs into ours if they're paying us back for something. It's easier than Venmo or PayPal, quicker and free. We love our bank for that. We use those features all the time. But anyway, the big suggestion is if you have kids or nieces or nephews or grandchildren, just anyone you can influence, at a young age especially, do what you can to help them get in the habit of saving for retirement. By the way, this is not investment advice, but the index fund our kids use in their retirement accounts, the sticker symbol is VOO from Vanguard. It's an index fund ETF, so you get the value and relative safety of an index fund with the lowest possible fees. Again, not advice, just FYI. All right, that's Raise Your Outer Game this week. Set those kids up to have millions in their retirement accounts when they get to our age. What a lovely gift, right? For real? Just got to get into that habit and start early. Next up, our challenge of the week. Easy one this week. Just take a look at your family's banking services. Is it easy and convenient? Does it support kids having their own accounts and having the experience of managing their money? Can they automate their putting money into savings and into a retirement account? I happily recommend the Greenlight card, especially for younger kids. We're even more happy now with our bank, which is Associated Bank in Wisconsin. The great part of that is in their app, how easy it is to make deposits and transfers. But I'm sure many banks, and maybe even most banks, offer similar services. And our kids' retirement accounts are at Vanguard. I think you need a separate firm like that to hold the retirement accounts. I don't think a bank can do that. Anyway, take inventory of your family's banking services. See if there's anything you can do there to up your banking game, especially as it relates to the young people in your life, building good habits and starting to save as early as possible. All right, that's the challenge for this week. Next up, highly recommended. I finished The Humans by Matt Haig. Really great. Tons of heart. Fun takes on being human and love and all that good stuff. Highly recommend that one. Reading another book. This is for work. You might have heard of this. In this last NFL season, there was an item in the news for a while because a football player, A.J. Brown from the Eagles, was spotted reading a book on the sidelines. And this got everyone's attention because, my goodness, a football player reading a book during the game. What's going on there? It turned out it was a book on the mental game called Inner Excellence. Not going to lie, I was a little jealous. Wished it was Raise Your Inner Game instead, you can imagine. But then I thought, well, I should at least read it, right? See what he says in there. And of course, the Eagles won the Super Bowl this year, and A.J. Brown had a good season, so it must be helping him. Got to be some value, and there's some things I should know about. A.J. said he did it because reading certain passages helped him stay calm. It struck me as almost like a Bible study application or use case in a weird way. You know what I mean? He would read those during the game to keep him from getting too worked up, and you can see that being helpful. Reading the book myself, though, I don't want to get into much detail here. It looks sort of small and petty on my part, but it's not a good book. It's not a good read. And honestly, I don't imagine it being that helpful for most people, again, given that it was clearly helpful for AJ. It's too long. It's too generic. Most people won't finish a book like that in the first place. I know that for a fact. And yes, I am biased, but I'm biased towards short, practical, applicable material that makes a measurable difference in people's lives. That's what we did with the QBQ book that has sold well over 1 million copies now, over 20 years. And that's the approach I took with Raise Your Inner Game. Read in an hour, use for a lifetime. This book is not that. And I'll just leave it at that. Speaking of being disappointed, I started watching season 3 of Reacher, the series on Amazon Prime Video. I loved the Reacher books. Didn't see the movie. Could not picture Tom Cruise in that role. I liked the first 2 seasons on Amazon enough. Not great, but it was fun enough. This 3rd season, it's not very good. The acting is stiff. The dialogue is flat. The story is predictable. It's sort of gratuitous, which I don't remember in the earlier seasons. Something I wonder now and then, when you see something bad, and even like specifically bad acting, especially with actors who've been good elsewhere, is that actually the actor's fault or maybe the director's? You want to blame the actor because that's what you see, but sometimes I think it might be more accurate to blame the director and the writer. Anyway, I'll keep watching. It's not a major commitment. I'm still interested enough, just not super engaging. I can recommend the first 2 seasons if you like that sort of thing. For the books, especially the early ones, definitely recommend those. Not recommending season 3 of the Amazon series. Oh well, can't win them all. All right, that's it for this week's show. Reminder, Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy, if you're an athlete or the parent of an athlete, is perfect for you. The book itself, Raise Your Inner Game, if you're a book person. And of course, our executive coaching brings all that together. Raise Your Inner Game. RaiseYourInnerGame.com for the sports programs. David11.com for coaching information. All right. I hope you have a great week. Spring continues to come and gets closer and closer. Super excited about that. Let me know any questions. Otherwise, keep up the good work. I will see you next week.